Sometimes fear and aggression are taught behaviors, but in many cases, it can also be caused by genetics. People often underestimate how much genetics have an effect in the dog's training and abilities. The goal of today's episode is to give you an idea of what you might be dealing with, and as a professional dog trainer, you may have to deal with aggressive dogs. This video is for instructional purposes only. I've tried my best to make this video as black and white as possible. However, there are many gray areas when it comes to working with a dog that has aggressive issues. First, let's discuss communication versus aggression. Before moving forward, there's an important point to understand. On more than one occasion, I've had clients tell me that their dog is aggressive. When they show me this aggressive behavior that their dog is performing, it becomes very clear to me that it's not aggression, but rather communication. Since dogs are unable to communicate at the same level we can, we have to be able to read their body languages as well as their vocal communications, as they may be signaling possible aggressive behaviors before it happens. Many owners don't realize this, and I've been told by people that have been bitten by a dog that the dog gave zero warning. However, this usually isn't true. In fact, dogs telegraph most of their behaviors, which is why it's important to become familiar with the signals your dog may be demonstrating before biting or acting aggressively. We'll quickly go over some of these warning signs to help you in case you are in one of these situations. Sudden lick-lipping, yawning, tail between the legs, ears going back, looking away, staring intently at the bite target, the dog's hackles going up. These are all signs that may be telling us, the humans, to stop doing whatever it is that we're currently doing. And if those don't work, the dog may escalate to growling or showing their teeth and even trying to walk away. If walking away doesn't work, then once again, the dog may escalate to actual aggression. The dog may even give a warning bite. These behaviors are known as the escalation of aggression. Keep in mind that these behaviors don't always mean the dog is going to bite. A dog that has been taught to have proper bite inhibition may also bite at the human in an attempt to get the human to go away or to back off without causing any injury. You have to keep in mind the context of the situation. Just like a person who may be cold will cross their arms, it doesn't always mean that they are closed off or angry. Often people will also confuse play with aggression. In many cases, dogs while playing will growl or even mouth at the person that they're playing with. This doesn't mean that the dog is aggressive. This type of play can also be important for a young dog's development, as it can help teach bite inhibition. You can stop this by redirecting the dog to a toy, a different behavior such as a climb command, or teaching them to stop it with a command. I do this by implementing leash pressure or value transfer, which I do have videos on that. Dogs will also correct other dogs. This is often seen when an older dog corrects a younger puppy. The dog may growl at the puppy or even snap or do a quick bite at the puppy. The dog's intention is to not hurt the pup, but rather teach the pup a lesson, such as respecting the other dog's boundaries. This is much different from a dog that is attacking another dog to cause harm. An aggressive dog that is attacking another dog will bite, hold on, and shake to cause damage. So let's discuss 4 main types of aggression towards humans that you may experience when working with a dog. First one is dogs that bluff. Dogs that will act aggressive in order to get a specific desired behavior from the human. I like to call these dogs fakers, or dogs using fake aggression. They're trying to manipulate a human to get a reward, but may not actually have hostile intentions or hostile feelings. Next is fear-based aggression. It's the most common type of aggression. This behavior is usually due to trauma, genetics, lack of exposure, or conflict in the dog's personality. They're acting in a defensive and hostile way to people or other animals. Third is aggression that develops from confusion. What I mean by that is, it's when a dog doesn't know what's expected of them. They don't know how to avoid, prevent, or stop a correction from happening. They haven't been given a clear path to success, which can result in confusion. This is the most, again, in my opinion, preventable type of aggression as caused by mistakes made by us, the humans. This is also why it's very important to always be consistent with your dog's training. Last is dominant aggression. This is the most least common form of aggression that I've seen. Since 2012, when I started training dogs professionally, I've only come across 2 dogs that were dominant aggressive. These dogs may bite regardless of being provoked or not. All right, so I want to go into more detail about the dogs that bluff. So we're going to discuss our fakers. It's imperative to be aware that a puppy or a dog may be using aggressive behaviors as a way to get the desired outcome by manipulating the owner. It's important to stop these behaviors before it develops into real aggression. Fake aggression or fake aggressive behaviors originate usually from owners teaching or reinforcing these behaviors without realizing it. An example could be your puppy's on the couch, you try to get your puppy off the couch, the puppy growls, and so you leave the puppy there. What happens next is the dog grows up, and this behavior has become hardwired into adulthood. While it may have felt innocent or even cute when the dog was a small, fluffy little puppy, the adult version of the puppy growling from the couch is now threatening and scary. These behaviors may start as fake or bluffs, but if it's not stopped early, the bites could become real. What should be done in a situation like this is to act like you're not even acknowledging the growl from the puppy, and then simply get the pup off the couch. I'll just grab them by their collar and nicely pull them off, ignoring any attempt they may make to try to prevent this, including biting at my hand. Even though they have sharp little teeth, the bite force usually is not strong enough to cause any harm, and once they realize that it doesn't work, they stop using it as a technique. This way, the puppy learns that growling doesn't work. Keep in mind that most puppies who are growling are trying to get a result from the owner. Fear aggression is possible, of course, and dominant aggression is going to be significantly more rare. Next is a list of some of the common ways a puppy may appear to be aggressive. Most of these will go away if it doesn't have a positive effect for the dog or the puppy. Biting at your hand when trying to take a toy from the puppy. Biting or growling when taking away food. Biting at your hand when putting on a collar or a leash. Aggressively rushing at house guests who enter. Acting aggressive inside the crate. Growling, barking, or snapping if given a command, or aggression towards other dogs. This becomes more of an issue if it's an adult dog that has been practicing the behavior for a while. And to make matters worse, if something has been working for a dog for a long time and one day it doesn't work, the dog may amp up the behavior to get what they want because in their mind, that behavior still works, but may suddenly require extra effort. Therefore, it can get worse before it gets better. This is known as an extinction burst. The behavior becomes more intense before it drops off. If I'm working with an adult dog that is displaying this behavior when I ask them to do something, I make sure to always follow through to guarantee they perform the action. However, I'm also very careful not to get bit in case that the dog decides to escalate the aggression to an actual bite. All right, for example, let's once again reference a dog instead of a puppy that refuses to come off the couch. I would first set this situation up so I can best control it, meaning I would make sure the dog has a leash and collar on. I would give the dog a chance to jump up on the couch. Once the dog jumps up on the couch, I would say wrong or off, whatever it is I'm using with that dog. Then I would use the leash pressure to pull the dog back off the couch. In this situation, some dogs may growl, but will be fine once you follow through and you pull them off the couch. I've had other dogs lunge at me, at which point I would use the leash to prevent the dog from biting me by lifting up on the leash and extending my arm, restricting the dog's forward movement. As mentioned in some of my other videos, never make anything personal by yelling or getting angry at the dog. I always try to keep in mind simple cause and effect. Once the dog realizes that this bluffing doesn't work on you, then the behavior will usually go away. Just keep in mind that the longer a dog has been practicing this, the harder it will be for the dog to break that behavior or for you to break the behavior from the dog. Next is dogs that resource guard. Dogs and puppy may use fake, bluffing aggression to guard their resources such as toys or food. When in a situation like this, I may have to use the Superman method, depending on the dog, to get the dog to relinquish the resource and learn that being aggressive is not an option. However, keep in mind that constantly harassing a dog while they're eating could be the cause of the aggression. Meaning, when you give your dog or puppy something, don't take it away just to show them that you're the alpha. When feeding a dog or giving them a bone or a stuffed Kong outside of a training session, for example, I find it best to give them these rewards in their crate. It usually helps the puppy or dog relax more because we're removing the possible feeling that someone or something is going to take the treat away from them, especially if you have multiple dogs. For puppies and dogs that are less likely to bite, my preferred method is to teach the dog that a hand coming towards them predicts something positive, such as petting, a treat, or a toy being delivered. You can see an excellent example of this in the How to Stop Puppy Resource Guarding video that I did with Bethany from PH Dogs. Since she does such a great job explaining and demonstrating this process, I would recommend watching that to understand and learn this technique. I'll make sure I put it in the description below. Now, if I'm going to use the Superman technique, so you can get an idea of what that is, I would first set up the session to ensure success as well as safety. First, I would place the dog on a back tie to prevent them from being able to move forward to bite me. Next, I would give the dog the item they usually resource guard. You can also place a muzzle on the dog, but I prefer to show the dog that the biting doesn't work instead of preventing the dog from biting only when they have the muzzle on. But that is an option, and it's a good step to be extra safe in the beginning. When doing this, I have protective gear on, including long gloves to prevent injury from dog biting. This is if the dog I'm working with has the ability to cause harm. A puppy wouldn't be really necessary for that. Next, I place my hand over the resource. The dog may try to bite me. If they do, I don't correct the dog with positive punishment, as this could actually make it worse. I simply keep my hand over the toy or food and let the dog bite and bite. Once the dog stops biting, I say, "Good job," and I remove my hand. This helps show them that biting doesn't work, but instead not biting the hand is what gets it to go away. I give them what they want when they give me what I want. And I repeat this process as many times as it takes for the dog to stop biting at my hand. We're showing the dog that just because a hand is coming, it doesn't mean you're going to take their resource away. It also teaches a dog that biting won't help. When doing this with an older dog, they may again amp the behavior up, that extinction burst that we talked about earlier, which means growling is more likely to turn into actual biting. With older dogs, it may be better to teach the drop it command, and if they don't drop it, reinforce with a correction as opposed to using the Superman method. This technique is better suited for puppies who can't really hurt you. In addition, if one bite location is not working for the dog, they may try to bite a new location on the human, so be aware of this behavior when dealing with all forms of aggression. Next is resource guarding a territory. If a dog is resource guarding something like a couch, usually the best option is to use obedience training with a leash. If they act aggressive, just use the leash and pull them off the couch to show the dog that it doesn't work for them to do that. You'll want to set the dog up ahead of time with the collar and leash, again like we talked about earlier, within their protective territory, and be prepared to use the leash pressure if the dog begins guarding that territory. Make sure there is a distance between yourself and the dog to prevent a bite, and in the event of a large aggressive dog, protective gear is highly recommended. So what about resource guarding a human? Sometimes the owner of the dog is the resource that the dog is aggressively guarding. If this happens, it can often be corrected if the owner implements positive punishment to teach the dog it's not an okay behavior. The important point is that the owner should be the one correcting the dog. Someone who's not the resource being guarded may actually create more aggression if they try to correct the dog while the dog is resource guarding their owner. From my experience, it's better when the owner corrects the dog for this behavior. Basically tell him, "Hey, I don't need you to protect me. I got this." However, you may also use negative punishment to stop this behavior. This works when you're dealing with a chicken with a bodyguard, as my good friend Bethany would say, which means a dog that is acting aggressive and confident because it's being held by the owner or is next to the owner. Once the owner walks away, the aggression stops. Here's how you can set up a situation to deal with this, or set up a scenario to help facilitate this. Have the dog on a back tie next to the owner. When you approach the dog, if it starts acting aggressive, have the owner walk away from the dog. Again, cause and effect. This will teach the dog that the unwanted behavior will remove the dog's bodyguard. After implementing this enough times through controlled training sessions, different locations, and different people approaching to generalize the training, the behavior may go away. Next is fear-based aggression. As mentioned earlier, this is one of the most common types of aggression and can often be fixed with confidence building, counter conditioning, and desensitization, which I talk about in a video a few weeks ago and in multiple other videos that I have on my channel. It's also important to always give this type of dog an escape. If they feel they can't escape a situation, then they may bite. In the dog's mind, they're not biting to hurt the human, but rather to protect themselves. When working with dogs that display this type of aggression, I like to follow a step-by-step process. Now, please keep in mind, before we begin, this is the process that I use for clients' dogs that I'm training that have fear aggression issues, but not my own personal dogs. With your own dog, you can skip the first 4 steps of building trust and confidence since you should already have that developed. To be safe, it's always best to have protective bite gear. First, we need to build trust, and the first step is I'll just sit next to the crate while the dog's in the crate. I may give them some food, but really I'm just trying to hang out with them. What I'll be very careful of not doing is rewarding the dog if they are growling or acting aggressive, because that could have the opposite effect of this exercise. So if the dog starts to growl, it doesn't get any rewards. I may do this for up to an hour or so, depending on the dog's behavior. The next step is to open the crate, let the dog out, and I just ignore him or her. I act as though the dog is not even in the room with me, meaning I don't let the dog see me look at them, and I don't talk to the dog. Usually I'll watch the dog through the camera on my phone, so it looks like I'm looking at the phone and not the dog. Eventually, they'll come up to me. They usually investigate me by smelling me or my legs. Once the dog starts to show interest, then I slowly start to walk around the room, dropping treats on the floor for the dog to pick up. If they get even more comfortable doing this and I'm not seeing any outward signs of aggression, I may stand with the food in my hand facing away. So I'll basically have the food in my hand, I'm looking away. It gives the dog the ability to take the food from my hand without me facing them. If the dog gets more comfortable with that, I may start to become even more frontal, allowing the dog to take the food directly from me. Then, if I feel the dog is becoming even more comfortable with me while taking food from my hand, I'll try to pet them to see if there's a reaction or if there's any signs there's going to be aggression, like we talked about earlier. What you don't want to do is pet the dog with your hand going straight towards the dog's head. This type of movement can trigger aggression. Instead, you want to move nice and slowly. To teach a dog to be comfortable with hands coming forward, put food in one hand and keep your other hand free, and bring both hands towards the dog at the exact same time, feeding and petting. I may pet their chest at first as this part of their body is less likely to trigger aggression. This is really about building trust. Once they trust me and they're comfortable, I'll begin with the normal training process using, again, slow movements most of the time until they become really comfortable and their confidence starts to go up. During the training process, you'll want to use counter conditioning and desensitization to help them get over whatever it is that they're afraid of. This process basically depends on identifying what causes the dog's fear and using high-value rewards to change the feelings towards those situations. This process is likely to be different for every individual dog, and this is where the skill of dog training really comes into play. What if the fearful dog doesn't want to come out of the crate? Fearful dogs will often prefer to stay in the crate over coming out to train. If that's the case, I do like to follow a specific process. First, I'll try to introduce the fearful dog to leash pressure before attempting to get them in and out of the crate, being careful the whole time and using very slow and gentle movements. The first issue that may arise is a dog will go into the crate, but they're too afraid to get out of the crate. For this reason, let them go into a crate, but keep the leash on them. Then you can use the leash to guide them out. Alternatively, just wait. A dog will always come out eventually. It's also recommended to cue the dog with the leash while using leash pressure and keeping your back to the dog. Basically, I'll put the leash behind my back, I have the crate right next to me, and I use the leash pressure allowing the dog to come out. This way, I'm showing my back, which is way less of a threat to the dog. Once the dog comes out, allow them to go back into the crate. Having them go in and out of the crate will get the dog more comfortable with this behavior. Also remember that dogs learn through predictability. If the dog learns that you're going to train the moment the dog comes out, you may find more resistance next time the dog doesn't want to train. This next one is very rare but worth mentioning: forward fear aggression problems. This is more dangerous of a dog situation, but a little more workable than the dominant aggressive dog, which I'll talk about next. I dealt with a dog like this fairly recently in 2020. A client came to me and they needed help with an aggression issues and they wanted me to evaluate the dog. Well, I discovered that this dog was a fearful, forward aggressive dog. What I mean is that the dog was extremely proactive in neutralizing threats with its aggressive behaviors. However, unlike dominant aggression, this was still based on fear. So while most fearful dogs growl or act aggressive in a defensive way to avoid the things that they're afraid of, this dog decides to take matters into their own hands and attack the thing that they're afraid of. When working with this dog, I had my back to her in a non-threatening way, and she still ran behind me and bit me. Although once I turned around and grabbed her by the collar, she stopped. As you can imagine, this is a pretty extreme and dangerous situation for a trainer to come across, and like a dominant aggressive dog, protective gear is always a wise idea. To train such a dog, it's basically a rehash of what we just discussed for a normal fear-based dog, but everything is going to go slower and you're going to have to be more methodical and generally being much more careful. Or if you're new to being a dog trainer, it's okay to refer the client to another trainer with more experience working with aggressive dogs. In fact, there are a lot of trainers out there that specialize in working with aggressive dogs. Next is confusion-based aggressive problems. These situations are usually the result of poor training and can occur without the owner even realizing that they're creating a dog with aggressive issues. One example is a dog that was featured by Inside Edition as Frankie the Demon Dog. As it turns out, Frankie wasn't a demon dog at all. She just had no idea what to do and what not to do, creating very erratic behavior. One way a dog becomes this way is that the timing of the obedience training is off by even a second. In this situation, Frankie's owner was implementing training but with poorly timed rewards and corrections, such as saying no too late after Frankie was calm and laying on the couch. In Frankie's mind, laying on the couch and being calm was the behavior that was wrong, and Frankie, out of frustration and confusion, answered with aggression. These situations are resolved by instituting proper obedience training, and it may take some time to work out the bad habits that were created from the previous poor training. Of course, in this situation, we have to make sure we identify the type of aggression issue to ensure it's confusion-based and not a more dangerous situation with a different type of aggression. The best way is to see how the owner performs their dog training techniques and if they're the ones creating the confusion and the aggression. I usually ask the client to make a video of the dog's behavior that I can study before the training. Next, we're going to talk about dominant aggression problems. As I mentioned previously, this situation or these situations are very rare. I've only encountered 2 dominant aggressive dogs among the countless dogs I've worked with since 2012. These are dogs using their aggressive behavior as a way to dominate and control a situation. Dominance to a dog also means having priority access to valuable or limited resources. The way to deal with these situations is you need protective gear on to block any damage from the bites. Then the goal is to simply show the dog that the aggression is not going to work. This means not showing fear or even responding at all to the bites. You're having to take the power away from the dog. You also want to do your best to prevent the dog from trying to bite you in the first place. That's going to be very important to start off with. One of the 2 dogs that I was working with was a dominant aggressive husky, younger dog too, only about 7 or 8 months of age. When I would set something on the ground for the dog would rush towards me and immediately try to bite or attack me. To the dog, I was taking something that he considered to be a valuable resource, even though I just set the item down. You can see how that can turn into an issue. So what I did was I set up many different situations where the dog may ordinarily try to bite the human, but there was a boundary set in place. In this case, I set an object on the ground, I put the husky on the climb command with a leash, and I back tied the leash. When I went to pick up something off the ground, which was the trigger for this dog, the dog ran at me but was auto-corrected by the leash, blocking his attempt to bite me. Afterward, the main goal was to repeat this as many times as I possibly could in different environments, getting the dog generalized and having them realize that they're not going to be able to bite anymore to get what they want, and the behavior started to go away. While wearing protective gear, if the dog is biting you, you can ignore the bite or you can pull them into the bite until the dog feels uncomfortable. As the only type of corrective measure I would probably use in a situation like this. You're basically pulling their mouth onto the protective gear until they realize that biting sucks and they don't want to do it anymore because it's uncomfortable. Again, be careful that the dog doesn't transfer the bite to a new location. So to quickly recap on dominant aggressive dogs, and this is just a very brief explanation, there's a lot more to it, but these can be dangerous situations. They do try to bite, they want to bite, and may even get satisfaction from it, so be very careful. You must prevent them from biting in the first place, but don't correct them while biting because this can turn into a fight. So you should have protective gear on regardless. If you don't have such protective gear available, this is a good time to refer that client to another dog trainer that specializes in aggression. Okay, let's talk about how to deal with dog-on-dog aggression. Just like we see different forms of aggressive behaviors towards humans, the same is true with aggression towards other dogs. You will see fear aggression, dominant aggression, aggression to get a specific result, etc. Generally, a dog will become aggressive to other dogs because of experiences that they had when they were a puppy, which could be lack of socialization, and other problems during the dog's upbringing or imprinting. In numerous situations, a dog can learn that other dogs are a threat, including being attacked. Another factor may be the dog's DNA and a built-in tendency to be less friendly to other dogs. In either situation, obedience can either stop or mask the issue. So even if a dog has a compulsion to attack another dog, they'll weigh that impulse against the thought of a reward or correction and are less likely to be aggressive. When restricting a dog from attacking another dog, such as when you have them on leash, it's possible that the dog will redirect the aggression towards the human. Over-arousal aggression, too much stimuli, can become a redirected aggression or an attempt to bite. Dogs can also be dominant aggressive towards other dogs, just like they can be to humans. This is an extreme situation, and as such, I never bring dominant aggressive dogs around other dogs to try to work the problem out. I just feel like it's not fair putting a non-aggressive dog in the vicinity of a dog that wants to attack them simply out of dominant bully type behaviors. Another way to go about this is keeping the dog muzzled, on a leash, and then exposing the dog to many other dogs in the area, like outside of a dog park, as mentioned in some of my other videos. You can keep the dog outside of the park, like along the fence and out of actual contact with other dogs, while doing obedience. Over time, and it may take a long time, the dog may learn to stop trying to intimidate other dogs. These are the concepts of desensitization and a bit of counter conditioning at work. If you do encounter another dog in the vicinity of the dominant aggressive dog, make sure you have full control. If the dog escapes your leash, and especially if the dog isn't muzzled, in a few seconds, another dog could be in a life-threatening situation. Dogs may also become fearful of other dogs because of things like trauma, genetics, lack of exposure, etc. They may have had issues when they were a puppy, incidences that involved other dogs, or the puppy could have been raised with a very fearful mom. The reason fear stems from the mother is because dogs will often replicate the behavior they see displayed by the mother. This behavior is identified when the dog cowers or whimpers when other dogs are around, or when other dogs intrude too closely. The dog may get defensive, growl, bark, hackles could go up, or even snap. Usually they don't want to hurt the other dog, they just want the other dog to go away. Their message is, I'm afraid of you, I don't want to play, please go away. These types of dogs can be fixed if you bring them around very friendly, nice dogs. I've worked this situation out many times before by introducing dogs that had these types of behaviors and issues to very friendly dogs in a play situation. At first, they would cower and whimper and run away from the other dogs, but over time, the dogs start to realize that these other dogs were not a threat. And as they discovered this and were given positive experiences, it often stopped the fear issues that the dog was having. This type of aggressive behavior can be identified by their signs of actual fear and cowering. So make sure you properly identify this type of fear that your dog has, because as we mentioned earlier, a dominant aggressive dog you do not want to put with a group of other dogs, because that could turn into a very bad and dangerous situation. Often dogs will also act aggressively to get something from another dog. Most people, when experiencing this, will call the dog the alpha. The reason is that the dog will often take what they want from a more submissive dog. For example, one dog has a toy and the other dog, the alpha, takes that toy from the other dog. They'll also take things like food away from a more submissive dog or someone's attention. The easiest way to deal with this is to just keep toys and food limited to just one dog at a time, or while one dog's playing at a time. You may also want to feed the dogs in separate rooms or in their crates. This usually won't turn into a dog fight because the more submissive dog will yield to the more dominant dog. If I want to stop something like this, then I prefer to prevent the dog from stealing or being a bully to the other dog. By preventing the dog from practicing a behavior, just like anything else, it will often go away. However, the best course of action is to simply not leave out anything that the dominant dog sees as valuable. You can try to teach the dog that it's not okay of a behavior by implementing obedience, but I would prefer not to put any other dog in a potential dangerous situation. Follow these 3 simple steps. Put away all toys that the dog may fight over and only allow them to play with toys when they are not around the other dogs. During feeding time, feed the dogs in separate crates or separate rooms. Teach both dogs their own separate climb command, such as their own bed, and don't allow them to ever go to the other dog's bed, ever. This way, the submissive dog, when feeling threatened, he or she can go to their safe place. When it comes to aggression, this is only scratching the surface. If you want to learn more about dog aggression, I would highly recommend working with a dog trainer that specializes in this type of training. Since it can be very dangerous, it's best to learn hands-on with an expert. I hope everyone enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want one-on-one help, I do offer in-person lessons as well as Zoom training sessions. If you want to support the channel, you can by liking, subscribing, becoming a patron, ordering a copy of my dog training manual, getting a shirt, shopping at my store, or sharing any of these videos. Thanks again, everybody, and I will see you next week.